Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Valentina, and Ukraine Media Center continues its operation today. Now we have invited you for a very important event. Now we will be discussing the government policy aimed at our potential students who stay in temporarily occupied territories or originate from there. We'll be talking about the challenges. We will be discussing what does and does not work. What's interesting that during our event, our speakers will get us familiarized with the story of a real girl who left the territory of temporarily occupied Crimea to enter a Ukrainian higher educational institution. So we'll discuss what were the challenges that she faced on that way and what are the problems we need to solve now to make sure that the system works. So let me introduce our speakers. Joining us today are Valentina Potapova, Head of the Direction of National Advocacy Department at Almenda NGO. Also joining us is Violeta Artemchuk, Chief Coordinating Director of Donbas SOS NGO. Also joining us is Anastasia Kalinina, lawyer at CrimeaSOS NGO, and Yaroslav Taranets, legal analyst at East-SOS Charity Foundation. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Valentina. So let me give the floor to you. Let me hear the story from you, and then we'll discuss the challenges. Good afternoon, everybody. So today we decided to start our press conference with a real story. The story that is unfolded right now. It's a story of a girl from occupied Crimea who decided to enter a Ukrainian higher educational institution. And very frequently we hear from our officials, like Ukraine is waiting for you. We hear from the public actors that there is a facilitated system implemented for such students, such applicants. Is it really so? Well, now you are about to find out, based on that story, that is still going on. So this story is a story of a girl who dared to enter a Ukrainian higher educational institution, but started facing the realities of Ukrainian education system. This story highlights a full complex of problems that such children are facing. So due to security reasons, all of the names were changed, and some of the facts of their biography were altered too. Let's see, in the presentation there is a little bit different. So from her teen years, she was dreaming to get out of occupation and to study in free Ukraine. She made friends with a boy who was a student of a Kiev higher educational institution, and as she graduated from school, her dream transformed into a plan. And starting from year 22, our protagonist, let's call her Yana, she started preparing to enter Ukrainian higher educational institution. So none of the people in her close circle were aware that she was going to enter a Ukrainian higher educational institution. In temporarily occupied Crimea, in fact, there was no access to Ukrainian websites, and after the beginning of the full-scale invasion, they totally blocked all of the Ukrainian sources. So Yana was only able to get information from her friend. Let's name him Alexei. And talking about other things, she was trying through VPN or otherwise to get some information about how she could enter a Ukrainian university. So she was preparing to enter based on the references of external independent testing because she was not aware about the existence of national multidisciplinary testing. She had no understanding of what is supposed to be studied. And again, I'm reminding you that she originates from temporarily occupied Republic of Crimea that has been occupied for the last 10 years. And on top of necessity of mastering the school curriculum, another problem was their funding, because as we know, there is no transport connection between temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine and territories under Ukrainian control. That's why people only resort to the services of private transporters, and the cost of ticket was 16,000 hryvnia. The route was taking 50 hours with private transporter all the way to the checkpost, and the passengers in that car that she was riding were inspected for a number of times. And it's surprising that that specific girl was drawing most of attention. She was taken twice outside that minibus for interviews, and during those so-called interviews, we don't know who was conducting that interview, but they were asking surprising questions like, why are you going that way? And finally, after 50 hours, she reached the checkpost, but the Belarusian border patrol has not let her through to Ukraine. She had a birth certificate issued by Ukrainian authorities that provides her with all grounds to enter Ukraine, but she was refused anyway. And during all that time, there was that virtual Alexei who was supporting her. He was providing advice, consultations, and other pieces of information. And despite the illegal nature of actions of the border guard service, she was facing a question like what to do in this situation. And on the very next day, she decided to go to Minsk, to Embassy of Ukraine, to get a return certificate. So bureaucratic system that she was facing stole a couple more days from her and a little bit of money. So 300 hryvnia to come to Minsk and about 1200 hryvnia to pay the levy for this return certificate. And attitude to her was quite hostile. She was saying those documents that the representatives of the embassy didn't need. They were throwing it in her face, and on top of that, they said that such attitude to her is because she got a passport of the aggressor country. So this girl was living in Belarus at the home of a woman who was cooking for her, and after a week upon her visit to the border, she was able to cross the border between Belarus and Ukraine. So for 7 days she was one-on-one facing those problems. However, Alexei was still waiting for her, and the story could end well here because she was supported with the border guard service. They were helping her to carry her luggage, because you see, a person who starts such a way, who walk on that path, that's a one-way ticket for them. So in that luggage, in those suitcases, was her all of her life that she put together before traveling to Ukraine. So she wanted to enter through education centers, and we keep hearing it's very simple. You come, everyone's waiting for you there, and she was told, no, you're late, you cannot enter. The budget That's why you can go back to Crimea and don't disturb us. And after that, she came to us and we started supporting her. And on the way of our support, we did not only apply to the Ministry of Education, but also to the Office of the Commissioner for Human Rights. But again, the actions of the education center were illegal, and we seem to have made it. It seemed like here, period, she entered, that's it. But no. So what happened with the entrance exam? So she had no access to a single website. She was not able to download even those textbooks that would help her learn Ukrainian language and Ukrainian history. She did it with the support of the same Alexei, who was handing over some materials to her. The story was way worth with the history of Ukraine, because the majority of materials on history of Ukraine are extremist materials from the point of view of the legislation of Russian Federation. So she did not make it quite well during the entrance exam. But we are being told that all of the children may enter because Ukraine is waiting for them. So she got 129 points. She was not able to enter a budget profession, but anyway, she made it. She made it to the university. But again, we cannot put a period in this story, because to sign a contract with her is impossible, because she has no passport of the citizen of Ukraine. She only has the certificate. So she applied to the State Migration Service to obtain a passport, but something went wrong with the passport, because to verify that she is herself, she needed either close relatives who can provide such verification, or undergo quite a prolonged procedure that my colleagues may try to tell you about in more detail. And finally, now we are at the point with our protagonist when she is recommended to be signed a contract with, but she cannot sign a passport because she has no passport, she has no money, she needs to do something because she cannot even get employed without passport. You understand? It's clear she cannot get employed without passport. That's why the matter that we want to discuss today is whether the state of Ukraine has taken all of the necessary efforts to make sure that our Ukrainian children feel protected. Has the state of Ukraine done everything to make sure that such children as Yana, without support of Alexei, without support of civil organizations who help our protagonists, so would she be able to walk all that way alone? So there is no period in this story, because ahead there's a lot of challenges. And I want to ask this question from everybody. Can we say to our children who come in 1,600,000, including 60,000 potential applicants to Ukrainian higher educational institutions, so have we taken all the necessary efforts to make sure that we don't come to this studio and tell stories like this? Because it's a very painful story for me. Well, it seems like a rhetoric question. We definitely haven't done everything we could after hearing this story of Yana. We keep hearing it from our officials that yes, we are ready, we are waiting. Sometimes I remember we were analyzing during our broadcast the number of those who get signed up to Ukrainian online system, those who express a desire to study in Ukraine. Those figures have fallen drastically recently, well, the reasons were unbeknownst to us, but now I think we may observe some correlation here. So, Ms. Violeta, let's take apart this case. So, first of all, it was about access to information. Let's start from that point. What can be done here? Well, I think that we may talk about what can be done a little bit later, but talking about the access to information, for me, it's one of the most painful issues. It's a question that, when I'm being asked, I kind of freeze, because we have this hotline, people call us. So as I'm being asked about persons who want to enter Ukrainian higher educational institutions and live in temporarily occupied territories and how to get prepared for application. So within a year we get calls on our hotline. So I cannot say that such calls only come in the eve of admission campaign. So like last October we got a call from a boy who said he was keeping track of the admission campaign, and he said, how do I prepare for it, because I've been living for 9 years in temporarily occupied territory of the Donetsk region, and as I'm being asked this question, I freeze. I would like to tell them that to prepare for your admission, you have to prepare the key subject, and in order to prepare for the tests on Ukrainian language and Ukrainian history that they never studied, I have no answer for them. I would like to write them to Telegram channels to give them links like, here is the training course, you just sign up and you have time until June to get prepared. The questions are okay, everything's okay with the success, so prepare yourself and come apply. But again, as I'm being asked this question, I freeze, because there is no single portal that we may recommend to the youth from temporarily occupied territories. There is some information in the website of Ministry of Education, but again, this website address is mon.gov.ua, so everything with .ua cannot be accessed from temporarily occupied territories. Talking about downloading some textbooks, it would be difficult without support from a tutor, from somebody who will be guiding this process, but they can basically just read the textbooks, no matter how difficult it is. It would be perfect, in my opinion, to have this information about how to prepare posted in the websites of those higher educational institutions the applicants want to enter. But the story with the higher educational institution is as follows. We were mentioned the monitoring visits to higher educational institutions, and when you look through their websites to find this information for the applicants from the temporarily occupied territories, you have to click through a million pages and more pages, and only then you get that information that results to be incomplete. Talking about the problems, really one of the biggest problems, even if the applicants have a desire to enter, so the biggest problem is the preparation, specifically in the context of temporarily occupied territories. Thank you, Ms. Anastasia. So the floor is yours. One of the biggest challenges is the documents, which is clear that after people have been living for 9 or 10 years in the temporarily occupied territories, they probably have not even ever obtained such documents, or those documents may have been lost. Well, thank you very much for your question. I would like to reflect for half a minute over the story of our protagonist, because we picked up this problem, and I thought that out of those statistics that we have very little number of applicants from the temporarily occupied territories enter. We work with Crimea, people come from there in hundreds, and during the years of the full-scale invasion, it's good if they come in dozens. But again, it's a misadvantage that we can support such people as a protagonist in such a targeted manner, but we want them to enter more and more. But we understand if they come in bigger numbers, the system may fail, and our resources are limited too, and we end up in a vicious circle. We tell the people, come enter, everything's fine and simple over here, but at the same time we see what is the way that our protagonist had to go, what is the amount of resources we had to engage for her from that very moment when she decided to enter, and until that moment that is lasting like now. And after we walk all that long way, it's clear that people have no rights without documents, and sometimes those who come are 17, 18, 19 years old. So before the full-scale invasion, they were not able to travel alone. Some of them don't have Ukrainian passports, and given the occupation for more than 10 years, when the occupation started, they were little small kids, and that creates another risk. Not all of the children who want to enter a Ukrainian university has parents who share their opinion very frequently. It is a big problem and an obstacle, because one way or another, if a person leaves without Ukrainian documents, they are supposed to have some confirmation letter, some document that confirms that that person is a citizen of Ukraine, and it usually happens with the help of the parents, but parents may be against, they may not want their child to study in Ukraine. So again, it's a long way, and here we may show understanding to the educational institution. It's a huge problem for them, and their representatives were mentioning it a lot of times, that they have to identify a person, because clearly when one person enters their institution, they have this connection between them, and in order to understand that this is exactly the person who was entering, they need additional verification. And on our end, we suggest some compromise, that we could say, like, please come, everything's gonna be fine, you're gonna get identified and enter, and the higher educational institutions are supposed to know that that person would be verified. They could sign agreement with them and all other necessary supplementary documents. Obviously, all of the higher educational institutions plan something. They have some quotes, and they have their plans. We understand it, but also I would like to mention, well, probably not everybody enters just like this girl, like a protagonist, but some of the people keep coming within more extended periods of time. Now it's 3 months. If they enter on a remote basis, it's good that last year the ministry were extending this term, but we don't know what's going to happen this year. It's a standard term of 3 months, but in any case, people are supposed to face it. Like, as when they come here, they're not going to have any documents. And again, about the way it happens in short, even on the example of Yana, people should come, and it takes 2 to 3 months, because people from occupied territories, in 90% of the cases, they need to undergo the personality identification, so that the state education service understands that the applicant is exactly the same person. And in other cases, we have to establish a video call with the parents in the temporarily occupied territories, but sometimes it takes a lot of time. It cannot always be done because, as Violeta said, the access from the occupied territories to everything that exists in Ukraine, and on top of the fact that lately everyone has learned about YouTube messengers and VPNs, and year to year it grows more and more complicated. That's why during this year and the years to come we have to do something, because it seems like after the money that you have to spend for a journey, that's the biggest problem you may face, because if people even come here, they don't always have money. They want to work, and without passport it's impossible to work, because again it's a vicious circle that we are unable to get out for. We have been unable to get out for the last 10 years. We were talking to Valentina, and she said like this year we've probably done a maximum of what we could do by us civil organizations. We have legal support hotline, awareness campaign, but everything breaks against the targeted information processes that you're just come across. And I'm happy that those people who attempt to enter, they don't get disappointed and they don't come back home. Thank you, Yaroslav. So your reflections and the challenges that your organization is facing. Thank you. In continuation of renewal of documents, let me mention it real quick, because we face this problem as a foundation involved in evacuation of our citizens. And I would like to mention, like, we evacuate children, people from that territory close to the front lines, from the territory under Ukrainian control, and it's difficult to renew their documents. So I can't imagine how difficult it is to renew the Ukrainian documents for a person who has been living in temporarily occupied territories for a number of years, and on top of that may have the paperwork extended by Russian Federation. So talking about the admission campaign, this topic is real sensitive and real painful, because Ms. Valentina has mentioned that in temporarily occupied territories there are around 1,600,000 are children. That's a humongous number that does impress. It does impress because I clearly realize that we're losing our future. Those are the kids who are a component of our society. Our economic potential, our cultural and educational potential for our country and for our development in general. In March, we've joined with the Secretariat of the Commissioner for Human Rights. So we got involved in the monitoring of educational centers, and I really appreciate their input, because the Secretariat of the Commissioner for Human Rights is one of the not so numerous agencies in Ukraine who is interested in the area of return of our kids, and they develop their real steps in this area. So we've attended 3 universities: Shevchenko University, Aviation University, and Nubip. So basically, the flagmans, Shevchenko remains a leader. The Aviation University, after a number of reforms, has become one of the leaders. So as we've come to monitor the education centers, we've learned just some interesting statistics for understanding of the situation. Within the year 2023, 10 applicants from temporarily occupied territories entered Shevchenko University, including 3 who have not shown up. Subsequently, and the Aviation University, Aviation University, this number was 17. and 2 to Nubib. This is quite demonstrative statistics, because we have to understand the topic of today's press conference is the state policy on admission. We have to understand that it's a complex of activities that contemplates that a child have to move to territory under Ukrainian control from temporarily occupied territories, and it involves a lot of factors. First of all, a psychological factor. Some people on our end, they never left their homes in Ukraine, and in this case you have to get out of sight of your parents because the parents remain in temporarily occupied territories. Then you have to come to Ukraine by yourself when you're 16 or 17 years old, then to undergo all those bureaucratic procedures. Obviously, it's not so simple even for a grown-up, and we're talking about kids, teenagers here. And another thing is the financial side of the problem. The colleagues were already mentioning it, and again, it's really important because that's why one of the recommendations would be to develop a complex policy, but in better detail with specific steps. As Ms. Violeta has mentioned, this is something that we are going to discuss in the end. So we understand we have to take a complex approach, not to approach it as just a regular admission. So to what extent is it possible? What steps are we supposed to take today to change something in future? Let's discuss it. Who's ready? And I think it's worth mentioning which parts of the state should be involved in this procedure. You know, I somehow recall Alice in Wonderland. It has a good citation. In order to stay where you are, you have to run, and in order to get somewhere, you have to run twice quicker. So we don't remain where we are. We started recoiling from those indicators that we used to have before, back in 2015, 2016. Moreover, there are more temporarily occupied territories now, and it would be good to report from the newly occupied territories, like this is the number of children who entered. But again, it all happened thanks to the fact that those children were having a remote education, a connection that we were able to preserve with the newly occupied territories. We were unable to preserve that connection through remote education with the temporarily occupied territories that were occupied earlier. So again, in the presentation, we had a number of components: travel expenses, admission, training, passport, and for all of those components, there is some government agency which is responsible for them. And because such government agencies are numerous who are responsible for every single component, it means that no one is responsible. For example, can we accuse Ministry of Reintegration that they are not responsible for that? No, we cannot, because the Ministry of Reintegration cannot keep track of what's going on in education centers. It's the responsibility of Ministry of Education. And can the Office of the Commissioner for Human Rights to keep track of all of the processes that are going on in Ukraine in terms of violation or non-violation of human rights? No, they cannot, because they have other job duties, so to say. Can the State Migration Service be responsible for all those things? No, they cannot, because it's a complex. And to me, it's very unclear. It has never been clear within the last 10 months why, until this moment, we don't have this state program of support for such kids. The state program that contemplates allocation of some budget which is of complex nature. So how the government programs or state programs are being written? First, we lay some conceptual foundations to understand what this state program may look like. Shortly, we are about to see the concept for renewal of education in temporarily occupied territories. I know that it's somewhere in the Ministry of Justice, and shortly it needs to be adopted. Hopefully it will. We have a concept of cognitive deoccupation of temporarily occupied Crimea, and I think that soon it will be adopted too, but we have no concept of access to education for those who remain in temporarily occupied territories, because it's not only about the higher education, it's about the secondary education too. And like Yaroslav said, they're being sent from one place to another with no response from anywhere. And you know, I'm tired of attending such press conferences, trying to reach out to the state agencies. Now we're trying to reach out to a Ukrainian society. Is Ukrainian society ready to say, like, no, we don't need that 1,600,000 children. No, we don't need 615,000 school children. I think that Ukrainian society will make it, will be quite successful in making it, but why are we so confident that there will be no newly occupied territories? Is the Ukrainian society ready to refuse their own children? No, I don't think so. So if there is no demand on part of the society, of the civil society, to the state to remember about those kids and to start building the state policy, this state policy will never be put together by the government, because it's a demand on part of you. It should be a demand on part of Ukrainian society, not a number of civil society organizations, but about the civil society at all. Like Yaroslav said, is the future of a country. We have the same number of children who left abroad fleeing the war, and I do not know what the future is gonna look like if we spend our children so talentlessly. Yaroslav, what can be done? Well, first of all, it was quite correct that we need a state program that would contemplate a number of adaptation steps, but in order to put this program together, to understand what are the activities to be implemented, in simple words, what should be done, it's necessary to establish a responsible authority, or at least a unit, a directorate in one of the executive authorities agencies. So in my opinion, it should be a directorate that is supposed to become a full-fledged analytical center which gathers information from temporarily occupied territories and in the territories under Ukrainian control, analyze that information, and then based on that data, they develop efficient solutions that would support the return of the children from temporarily occupied territories, because currently the situation is looking like this. There are some agencies which the responsibilities of which overlap at this point, but no one becomes a headliner to take the full responsibility. Everybody does some small bit within their responsibilities and their competencies, which we do appreciate, but we need a headliner. We need a responsible unit, a responsible person who will be responsible for this issue. Only then this topic can be promoted in the masses. This is when we will be able to get the results, to choose the indicators and to implement some activities that will yield some positive influence. Thank you, Violeta. I know that in the expert crowds there is such an opinion. Isn't it too late to start thinking about the children who have been not with us for 10 years? Okay, if we recognize that it's too late, what should we do? Just let it go? Well, of course not. Yaroslav was mentioning that directorate, it would be real cool, positive, it would have a positive impact. But when such directorate or other units would be established, I would recommend them to remain in touch with the civil organizations who were trying to promote something within those 10 years. And we need not us to have webinars for those training centers, but probably we can get involved in other capacity, not to establish information hotline to get it bureaucratized, but to make sure that we are properly briefed, properly aware. Well, we need to discuss it as planned, because it seems like no simple government agency, no single ministry, when Yana applies to them, or some girls whom we support, or the boys whom we support, who desperately apply to their government agencies, no single agency would say like, okay, calm down, check it out, watch here. They start juggling with the decrees, orders, acts, and they just intimidate the applicants and they scare them away. So yeah, a government authority, a government agency may be a probable solution. And Anastasia, well, thank you. I think my colleagues have described it all. It's a complex solution, but it's simple at the same time. So why is it simple? We need two components that we need, but again, it's a colossal job that a lot of people should be get involved in, everybody bringing their own expertise, and given the institutional memory of our organizations, we remember the way it was built from the very beginning. But you know, you said like too late, more than 10 years of occupation. Well, in fact, it's not too late. Probably we should not rely on the patriotic stance of the applicants, like to count on them coming to Ukraine driven by their enthusiasm. Because I was asking myself, if I get in the shoes of a graduate, a school graduate in Crimea, and if my parents are liberal enough to ask me, where do you want to enter, whether it's Kiev or Moscow, and in my opinion, I would choose something that is more simple, and coming to Kiev is not always simpler. So we shouldn't count on the applicants and their parents. We need the state to do some great job, because 1,600,000 is a lot, and given the fact that half of those people are one step away from being conscripted to Russian army and sent to the front lines, well, you know, this problem starts looking different. Recently, Oleg Sentsov, who is currently fighting, he was making a post that his company was taking a 19-year-old Russian as a prisoner of war. And I thought to myself, it can be someone from temporarily occupied territories, right? And honestly, it's scary, because Russia has a lot of access to Ukrainian civil population who ended up in occupation. And I don't really know who can contest it, who may object me when I am saying that we have to free people from their that we need to pull our people from there with the help of Ukrainian education, which is one of the best. It has a lot of prospects, a lot of things basically. It's bad that all those things are not structured and they're not communicated to the people in a way that would render all those things interesting for them. So what can you say to the children who are really thinking about it? Yeah, we were thinking about what we would like to say, what are the pluses. So we clearly understand, we know what are the pluses of Ukrainian education, because the emotional component is important, but sometimes people need just simple solutions. After Ukrainian education, you can go to finalize your study elsewhere, anywhere, or like you will be studying in a democratic state, you will have a lot of prospects. All of the universities have two-level diplomas from other countries, so those are the real things. But at the same time, there is a lot of shortcomings that, like, I would like to tell them, like, please come, everything's gonna be all right with your passport, with the dormitory, there will be a financial support extended by the state. Please come, study, work, because unfortunately now not everybody needs people for some specific professions. It's not good to neglect the people that we need so bad, given the demographic situation in Ukraine. Well, first of all, I would like to remind you that the girl that I was telling you about, she's a real young girl. At all this time, she had been spending in Crimea. So to say that there are no people left there who would like to move to Ukraine, no, I don't think that it's so. So talking about the problems that they're facing, what would I tell them? First of all, I would like to tell them, like, guys, look what's going on in Russian Federation. Look, you know, this, it's spiraling out of control. First it's closed borders, then restrictions on YouTube. Now you see, this is what you're seeing now. Ahead of you is North Korea. You have a chance of jumping off this train. I apologize for my jargon, but what is waiting for you here? As civil organizations, we take all the steps to make sure that the state hears us. On top of that, you are going to get a Ukrainian passport that opens doors to the whole world to you. You're getting a Ukrainian diploma that enables you to continue your master training in all over the world. Yes, it's difficult now. We're saying it, but we're trying to help. We create information websites. Now our organization even has found teachers who wrote those textbooks based on which the applicants can prepare. I don't know how are we going to disseminate them, but they are already here. So we take some efforts on our end. If you have problems, please contact us and we are going to try to help you. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Do we have any questions on the floor? If so, please let me know. Good afternoon, Volodymyr Leshenko. I work as a representative of National Council of Ukraine on TV and radio broadcasting in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol. I'm a lawyer, an attorney, and I'm deeply connected with the issues of passportization of the citizens of Ukraine who left temporarily occupied territories. So first of all, I would like to say that finally the law has come into force on the joint demographic register, and starting from this date, the citizens of Ukraine can get both internal and external passports, because starting from the 12th of May, the issue of passports was suspended. And I would like to ask you, do the central media ask you to provide not like some brief comments, but some profound information related to these problems? The acquisition of Ukrainian education, I'm talking about the national media, like Media Top 5, the texts that are parts of TV Marathon. Well, I think everybody here, all of the panelists, got their own experiences. So talking about the national media, Marathon never asked us anything. So what I would like to mention, Suspilna is asking us for comments, for example, and some other media broadcasters, but I know that when we are being contacted, we are not requested to provide some expert comments, expert opinion, but more of a stories, some sensitive stories, but probably they work well in terms of drawing attention. And they're like, okay, so what did they say, and what did she say, and when she called there, what did she say, and what was she responded? So this is our experience, not expert opinion, but rather such type of comments. Yeah, I support Violeta. So in terms of requests for the expert opinion, very, very unfrequently it happens. So, but again, it happens before the 1st of September, and then in the end of the curriculum year, or probably at the beginning of the admission campaign. So those are the 3 points when we get contacted. So I've mentioned that today we're here to appeal to Ukrainian society, because for media, why would they write something that the Ukrainian society doesn't want to hear? This is why I emphasize it once again. Yaroslav was mentioning it, Anastasia and Violeta were mentioning it. That's the matter of national security. Children in temporarily occupied territories is not about education, training, or admission. It's about the national security. And if media understands that when they request some expert opinion from us, they are supposed to ask, what is the future of Ukraine? It's not about the 1st of September or start of the admission campaign. It's a way bigger problem. Thank you very much. I would like to thank you for this conversation. I would like to thank all of the panelists, all of the spectators, everybody who joined us. Thank you for touching upon such complicated but necessary topics for our society. Obviously, I want to thank our security and defense forces, thanks to whom we can hold events like this. Let's continue working together for our victory. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes.